that clock. Jared, will you lead us in the updated, excuse me, the updated budget projection?
Absolutely. I know we had an Audit and Finance Committee meeting back at the beginning of this month. The projection, not a whole lot has not changed since then. What I did update the budget from when we approved it May 9th, I guess it was, the tentative budget, was I did now include a cost in the budget for summer driver's ed. Is really the only update that has taken place since our May 2nd meeting compared to our May 9th tentative approval till now. So there was about $15,000 put in there for summer driver's ed. Other than that, the numbers are all pretty much the same as we've been looking at. Revenues still seem to be coming in relatively kind of where we're projecting them to come in at. Our EIT is still coming in very strong. It has the last couple months higher than we have been getting, so that's a good thing for the district. We have not received any certification yet from the county on our assessed value. We should be getting that probably in the next week or two. I'm hoping we have that before we approve our final budget on June 13th. The county is saying it should be coming the first week of June, so we should have that by our June 13th meeting.
That's awful early. Don't we usually go to the second meeting, or don't we have one?
To approve the budget. We
Usually
typically have done it the second meeting, but the
Oh,
committee
okay.
in the fall had requested the first meeting, so.
I have no recollection. But that's fine. Okay.
But that's what the meeting we've been projecting to have it, or to approve it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Do you know how many kids have signed up for summer driver's ed?
I don't.
I didn't expect you to, but I thought I'd take it.
Here's Walter. How you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Sorry about being
It's
late.
all right. My question is, where do you think we'll end up if you had to take a guess?
For the 22-23 budget?
I mean, last year we had a big number and then we had a small number. Small one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it certainly looks like 21-22 is going to come out to the positive, hopefully even better than the 458,000 we're projecting there. The 3.1 million deficit for 22-23 is larger than we've had in the past, but there is $1 million in there in the budget to transfer to capital reserve. So really, it's about a 2.1. Hopefully, revenue still can continue to increase. I've kept interest earnings relatively low. Hoping that those kind of increase and we have some investment opportunities to earn some additional money. But I mean, my hope is we at least break even on that 2.1. But we are kind of, even though we are conservative in budget and revenues, we are kind of closing those gaps, I think, a little bit more. So I would hope it breaks even, but I'm not fully expecting that next year. I would think that we may take a little bit of a loss next year. Not a loss. We'll just use some of our fund balance.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Now you have, so our final adoption of this is June 13th, and we will not have a meeting before that, so you should keep us up to date or something.
Yeah, we can have a brief, we can have a discussion on June 13th about the budget, if we have any updates.
When's Jamie coming back in?
She would probably not be back in here till, I think on the schedule, we are set for bond sale sometime in July, probably.
All right. Now you have on here athletic funding.
Yes, back in November, we were having discussions on athletic funding for really the three sports that the district provides some funding to, but doesn't fully fund at this point: lacrosse, hockey, and rugby. And at the time, the board approved really a one-time allocation for the 21-22 school year, which we have been giving out to those three sports. In this budget projection, in the budget that we have proposed here for 22-23, there is no additional funding for those sports on top of the $2,000 that we were giving each of those teams, the boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, hockey, and rugby. So I really, it's not in the budget now. I wanted to open it up to the committee for your thoughts. Do we want to include something in there for them next year, or how do you?
What did we do last year? 10 to each team, I forget, 5 to rugby and 10 to,
We gave 20 to lacrosse. That was 10 for boys, 10 for girls, 10,000 to hockey, and 2,500 to rugby.
20. Well, you tell us.
Well,
What do you think?
it's,
Go ahead, John.
rugby's still a countywide sport, which is different than hockey and lacrosse. Hockey is only Indiana kids, is that correct?
I think it can vary from time to time, but usually
So it's also, okay, so it can have county kids in it too, or anybody?
Yeah.
Okay,
and typically we would charge, like if a kid was to come from another school district. Well, no, because they're not they're
Yeah.
not considered a school sport.
yeah.
Like
So rugby and hockey are similar in that vein.
yes.
Lacrosse is all Indiana kids, both boys and girls, is that correct?
Well, I would say probably 95% of the time, but that is one that if a kid from another school wanted to come and play,
But I could do the same thing. You can make the same comment about baseball.
yes. Yep.
Okay, lacrosse is a PIAA sport, and the other two are not.
Yes.
Okay, I think we should consider fully supporting it as a varsity sport.
What?
Hmm?
Fully supporting what?
Lacrosse, boys and girls lacrosse. Do the coaches and the fields and things that we would do for any other team. We asked them a decade ago to prove themselves, and they have. They have, I think it was 40 boys and 30 girls. And they've been running a successful program. So
Which one's a PIAA?
lacrosse, boys and
Lacrosse.
girls lacrosse is, whereas hockey and rugby are not.
Back in
And
I think
hockey and rugby are a club sport.
they're club sports and they run under a different flag than PIAA.
Hockey, I think, has its own association.
Yeah, and I believe rugby does also. It's not a PIAA sport yet, if ever.
Where are we with, we also had funding requests last year about new equipment
That was
on
for
the track team.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was for the
those
track and field.
those are included as part of the capital reserve budget.
For
Yeah.
what's scheduled to be purchased when?
It would be sometime in the 22-23 school year. So probably we would get that in the spring to be ready for.
And what did you put that in for?
45,000.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that here.
Wasn't there something else though? Didn't somebody else need something? There was more than,
Or two things from track and
Yeah.
field.
2 from
It was
track.
mainly track and field.
But there was another sport that
It
was,
was the pit, right? Or
The
the
pit and something else.
cushion around it.
The pit and then the pole vault cushion underneath it somehow. I don't-
So there were two things that were expensive. for track.
And both from track, yeah.
so that's 45,000.
Yeah, the estimates that we had were slightly less than that a year ago, so I added something in there for inflation, but it would be around 45,000, and that's in capital reserve.
And your athletic director fully supports that.
The purchase of those, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, he
So
was,
somebody's gone and looked at this and make sure,
yes.
and that's in the budget. Okay.
It's in the capital reserve proposed, yes.
Yeah, we vetted that out during the committee meeting.
Yep, and we have it on the agenda to discuss as part of the audit and finance as well, because that.
Seems like ages ago.
It
Seems
does seem like a different
Was it
generation.
just last year?
Well, how much does it cost to then fully fund lacrosse?
That's my question to Jared.
I think last time we looked at it was around $60-some thousand a year. I mean, when we talked about it in November,
That's total for boys and girls, or is that,
let me look it
We
up here.
talked about a phase in.
That's what we had, the admin recommendation back in November was to phase it in over a couple year period where next year we would give $30,000, $15,000 to boys and girls lacrosse. And then we'd go to 40. And then after that, for the 24-25 year, in the 24-25 year, we would fully fund it. So over 3 years, we would phase it in.
And is that in your projection?
That is not in the projection at all.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we, rather than tease them, we either fund or we don't. We either hire the coaches or
Well,
we don't.
But with 45,000 already in there, I think we have to look at a tiered approach.
No, there's only 20,000 in there.
Well, what
Talking
he's talking
lacrosse.
about, the tiered on lacrosse. You said 15,000 each the first year,
Well, that'd be this coming year.
And
right?
that's not in the budget.
No,
No, there's not, the only thing that's in the budget projection right now
we
is
can't go for months.
2,000 for each of them, and that's what was approved a couple years ago.
Okay, what's
This year we spent 20,000 for those two.
10
teams.
each, yeah. Okay, what's the feeling of the committee on this request? Senate? What do you think?
Well, I think sooner or later we're going to do it. I just don't know with everything else that you know my opinion about that we should be just, I definitely think that we need to do it slowly with lacrosse. I also definitely think based on the obvious success and performance and enthusiasm by the rugby club that we should maybe, start looking a little bit more at giving them some.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we should give them all something this year, but the question is, but we've gone from that to funding lacrosse. so,
You could certainly make the comment that rugby put their 2,500 to very good use.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, Jim, you can speak to that.
Well, yeah, they went from nothing, started in 2018, and the whole way to state champions, and they're very impressive to watch. It's a fast-paced, violent sport, and Zubin's blowing up on the sideline, but there's no huddles, there's no plays called. It's all player-driven, field captain-driven. It's very impressive to watch. I've never really watched rugby live in person. Got most of the rules down, I think, but it is amazing to really watch the players actually take charge, because it is just bam, bam, bam. As soon as you get tackled, they call them rucks, basically. So they have to, like, a bunch of players just drape themselves over the ball to protect it so the other team can't get it. And somebody grabs it and immediately pitches it, and then they're off again. Like, there's no break like football where you call play and you wait for it to go.
It's like soccer.
It is like soccer, just a lot more violent. It's like watching.
I've watched high school boys soccer and boys.
It's not even close, Tom.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
I mean, the collisions that you get in soccer.
They were playing in 90-degree weather, and like the physician part of me wanted to stop the game because there's literally players vomiting on the field. Okay. At the end of it, you couldn't tell which team won and which team lost. They had black eyes. They took one kid to the hospital for hydration. Like it was very, very brutal.
I'm changing my mind. I'm
And every one of them,
tortured by football and the possibility of concussions, and you're talking to me about heat stroke and dying.
well, it's
and
not heat stroke.
black eyes
No.
and
But that's the thing. Without the pads, these kids aren't indestructible. That's always been the problem with football. When football evolved to these suits of armor where these kids feel indestructible and they're not tackling properly, they get hurt. These kids don't have that protection. So they know that's part of the training of the whole sport, is to know how to tackle. There were a couple yellow cards handed out because you're not allowed to tackle, above the shoulders. You have to tackle low, and that's very, very tightly regulated. But it's very impressive. It really, really is.
So do they have much bench strength?
There's 15 to a side playing, and they probably have 30 or 40 on the team total.
So they're not going to graduate this year?
There's a fair number graduating this year, but they still have a very full roster. That's what got them, I guess, a couple of years ago. They made it to the semifinals and did not have the bench strength. And through attrition, I think they ended the game at 13 on their side, and they ended up losing semifinals or maybe the quarterfinals. I'm not sure. But they definitely have a deep team. At State College, they did not. You could watch State College's bench probably had like 7 or 8 on the sidelines, and we had a whole team sitting on our sidelines.
Oh, we should get some of the Pirates
How
to
do
go.
they substitute?
I don't know the ins and outs of it. Every once in a while you see somebody run on, but
They don't stop the game.
they don't stop the game. Or there are natural breaks here and there. You fumble the ball and it fumbles forward, that's illegal. So they stop it. And,
Anytime.
anytime.
Can run off at that point.
Yeah. It's a real quick exchange. They did have, so there's 2 halves, 40 minutes each. At the 20-minute mark, the referee called a timeout basically for a water break that was not in any of the other games. I think it was just because of the heat they had that instituted.
Terry?
I guess the question I always ask is, where's the money gonna come from? If we decide to, it makes sense when we talked before the lacrosse, since it's a PI AA sport, both women's and boys. I like the tiered approach. I think we still need to talk more about the hockey and rugby.
Yeah, I see it as 2 kind of different issues. So we have 3 teams, and there's a differentiation between one of them on lacrosse. So I think if we can do it, I think we should try to figure out how to give more to, at least at this point, to rugby and hockey than we gave. Well, at least the same, I should say. That's the last year. Tell me the numbers again. Rugby got 2,500. Perhaps we could double that, and we could, hold on the hockey.
Rugby got 2,500, hockey got 10.
Hockey got 10. Well, that seems kind of lopsided in the view of a championship.
And
Well, the
then,
hockey team went to the state playoff too, right? And then they lost
I'm not sure.
over in,
I think they did make it to play.
Well, there you go.
I don't know what the costs are either. Hockey seems like a very equipment-laden.
it's
Sport.
expensive.
Oh, the ice times.
Yeah.
$200
I think they're-
more.
Fundraising wizards. I don't know how your fundraising is on that rugby team, how much you have to check.
I was not involved. Yeah, it was. I remember Diego came home with a form and said, "I want to play rugby." I'm like, "Does your mom say it's okay? Like, make sure you call her. She's in Spain." She said, "Yeah, go ahead."
You were going to take that responsibility.
Oh,
Hey, Mom,
some
I'm
parents are different than others.
Marines.
I didn't have a problem with it. You want to play, but
So did
it
they,
feels like a weird decision for me to make. Your mom should play.
but did you have to, did Diego his parents have to pay anything else? I mean, what was the amount? Because
It was
I know you gotta have a
nominal.
ball.
It wasn't a lot. I think there wasn't a application fee or something, but it wasn't a lot.
Oh, okay. And hockey, I know it's pretty expensive. So,
The sports are all really good fundraisers.
they all are, yeah. It's been.
But what concerns me is, and I've been watching with lacrosse and wondering, they've been raising the funds to keep this going as a club sport all of this time. And they suddenly, after time, wanted us to support it. How much of that fundraising is still going to go on to help us offset the costs? And if we could count on part of that, that would be nice. We absolutely couldn't take on the hockey, lacrosse, and rugby as
No.
full-fledged sports because the hockey and lacrosse are expensive.
And I don't know if there's any way to have an agreement written up that they would agree to continue their fundraising efforts, at least to the amount that they've been able to do it so far with the boosters. I mean, I think we're at the point now where we've got to be a little more equitable.
Could we fund certain portions of lacrosse? The coaches, the officials, the fields, the transportation?
Yeah, I mean, what they're doing right now as far as the money we're giving them is basically giving a detailed invoice to us of what they spent the money on. So they've, here's referees, here's transportation, we paid the coach stipend, just so that we have proof of they at least spent up to the $10,000 that we gave each sport. So, I mean, you can,
The other difference between lacrosse, hockey, and rugby is that we have girls playing lacrosse. Okay, and the other 2 sports do not have girls. And we have to.
That's
increase-
only partly true. Zubin said he has girls that expressed interest, but he doesn't have the time to coach them.
But the fact is today.
Right now, today, there's no
we don't-
girls team.
Yeah, the lacrosse is the only girls sport that we're talking about.
Aaron,
There are girls that play hockey though. When I was at high school, there was a girl that was a goalie.
There's the girls that play on the team, they have played in the past, but it's not a girls team, and it's certainly not a female heavy sport.
No, but they had 3 girls on the team the year that they went to the playoffs.
Yeah, when I
So,
asked the
Tom, what
part about
point are
hockey,
you
there was no
driving at?
girls playing.
Tom, what's your point?
My point is that we need to encourage the girls' sports too. And lacrosse does that,
Yeah.
which is again, another point for funding it. Okay,
Well,
again,
but we don't want to create too much demand, do we? Because we've got a lot of sports.
Well, the demand's already there. The kids are already voting
You're
with their
convinced
feet.
of that? Okay.
So I think softball had 13 players this year.
All right, okay, Sue Reed, what do you think?
And I like the plan that was in place, the tiered approach.
Yeah. Any feeling about hockey or rugby, what we might give them next year? So based on the numbers of last year and the fact that they're boys sports, how do you feel about the possibility of maybe doubling rugby and not, and just bringing it up even with what we get? Oh no, we gave them 10,000.
But it's a lot more expensive sport.
Yeah,
But there's fewer people playing it than rugby.
Is there?
are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. Certainly that. You got 20-some players on this.
Are
on
you
the
positive?
team. Yes, I'm positive.
Okay.
We have one varsity hockey team.
They don't have enough for a JV team, I don't think.
I don't know if they actually play JV. I know they play hockey. Okay, my suspicion is they don't play JV because they can't afford the stuff.
But we don't know how many kids are on the hockey team.
It's not 30. But feel free to check with the hockey guys.
I'm in favor of doubling the rugby allotment. I am. I personally, I think that.
I'm in
but-
favor of that.
okay. That's my personal
And holding
take.
hockey where she is.
Well, no more.
So that would be 5,000 for rugby. and
Yeah, 10
10
for hockey.
So we've got 15. And then if we do a tiered approach, we're another 15, right? For each team, another 30,000 for,
Another 5,000 for each team. You're going from 10 to 15, right?
No,
no.
we said keep hockey at 10.
They're saying the two
I was
lacrosse
talking
teams.
for the lacrosse.
So 30 for total for lacrosse this first year. So that adds up to what, Jerry? I don't even want to hear the
30,
number.
40, 45.
It'd be 45 for
It's a bar.
those 3.
So Jared, you said that
Well,
we
you-
paid the stipend for the lacrosse coach? Is that going on as payroll and on to pensions?
No, what we've at this point is just, when I say that, like if they paid the coach a stipend from whatever they fundraise, they put that kind of on a reimbursement form. And then we just issue a reimbursement check to the lacrosse booster group.
Okay,
So yeah, nothing has been run through payroll at this point.
Well, is there any possibility we could go out to 25, 26 on full funding of women's lacrosse? Or lacrosse?
just women?
Well, yeah, the whole team. Well, I think it wouldn't be bad to get the women's team running. Oh, we haven't heard from Tammy Blank. Do you have any feeling about this? You have girls in school right now, so what?
Yeah, I have no feeling right now. My kids are just still riding high over the battle bots competition, but.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, we were watching it all weekend. It was on YouTube, finding different battle bots things, so.
Awesome. Yeah. Walter, what's your feeling?
I certainly agree that we should up the stipend for rugby. I think they certainly have shown they've got a certain amount of metal there that's worth the investment.
Okay.
I think we hold hockey. I pretty much agree, hold hockey and stay with the overall phase-in plan for the lacrosse. I really feel, and I realize that there is a technical difference between a PIAA sport and the other teams, rugby and hockey. But I also have to say that I think those rugby and hockey kids play their hearts out just the same as anybody on a PIAA team. So I think we have to continue some support for both of those teams.
Well, I'm not willing to move forward with a team as expensive as hockey, of the 3, unless we start to be able to develop some sort of an agreement with the booster clubs that the fundraising won't suddenly dry up. In other
Yeah.
words, that we could develop that we'll fund to the point where, you haven't raised the money. I don't know how to design that agreement, but
But I think Julia, that somebody raised a question, maybe it was Tom. Maybe we fund a particular phase of the sport, like the coaches, transportation and safety related equipment or something like that. And then the rest of it is, up to the sport to raise. So there might be,
So we could restrict these two gifts into rugby and hockey right now. That they have to show proof that they're not going out and using it to put gas in people's cars to go to the games or whatever. I mean, I know that's transportation, but I think
They're doing that now.
They already are providing like a detailed invoice or kind of a reimbursement form to
but
us.
must they? Have we had that as part of the resolution?
I only would pay them if, at this point, they provide that.
The gatekeeper.
Jared looks good in pinstripes, but not other stripes.
Well, what if they come in and they say something else on that invoice? Will you just say no?
I mean, they're not providing receipts or anything. Like if they hand the referee $100 for reffing, they're not getting I mean, I don't know that they can provide receipts for that. I don't know what that looks like out there.
Then how can you pay it? I won't let anybody have anything else. I have that receipt in my hand. That's my boss, he'll tell you.
I mean, we don't I mean,
They can say, we did this for $100, when really they,
But they can
don't
just
tell them
say
someone
that.
else have dinner.
But
Well, I
they
know
can-
rugby gets their referees from PA Rugby, so that's a regulated thing. That's why the one game had to be rescheduled because there was no referees available. So I'm sure all their pricing is available, with the receipt because they charge the same amount for every game. So I mean, I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem to provide if we held them to that standard.
Well, I think there has to be a standard we hold to, and I don't know how to design that, but I mean, and I'm not saying anybody would think of this, but let's say somebody says, we gave this guy $100 to ref the
Right.
game, and you actually gave him $250.
Or you actually get them 50 and.
Or you actually
Yeah,
gave
the
him
other way
out
around,
for,
yeah.
popcorn after.
yeah, I mean, I think at this point, they've certainly proven that they have more than even $15,000 worth of expenses that we're helping them pay. We're certainly not giving them $50,000 and they only have $25,000 worth of
Right.
expenses.
We're not getting 10% at this point. Well,
So,
if you remember when we did lacrosse, they first came in with only boys. And we challenged them to develop girls teams. And it took them extra time, but they did do it.
Yeah.
The boosters reached out, they started with the boys and they reached out to the girls and they started that too. So doing a similar thing with these other two sports is not insane.
No, I was going to ask what that process looked like because I've talked to Zubin about that, and he said if he had a coach for the girls, they could have had a team this year. There is already interest expressed to him. He's like, I just don't have another second in the day. But is there when you did it with lacrosse, like you said, it was just like you said, just a challenge, get a girls team together.
Okay, and basically we said we won't fund boys lacrosse without a girls team.
Yeah.
And here we are a decade later, more or less, and they're sort of
Yeah.
with two viable teams.
Cinda, just so you're prepared for this, the girls are more violent than the boys.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
So as Zubin was still running around doing laps because he was a nut after they won. The girls Division I teams were coming on for their championship, and it was threatening rain, so they wanted to get it going. So they were already out there, and they started immediately. We were still walking off. Holy cow! It was I wanted to stay to watch them, but it was already late. It was amazing. They are even more aggressive.
But Jim, to reiterate, they were coming to us begging for money,
Sure.
and we just said, okay, to even consider it, because of Title IX and just being fair.
Yeah. I think
Okay,
that's a fair thing. 'Cause
you-
like I said, the interest is already there, and like Tom said, they're voting with their feet. So if that challenge is put to them, you want full school support, you want full funding. This is what we're asking for. We need boys and girls team to bring you on board. I think that's fair.
Initially, all we did was go out and use Indiana and the facility. Okay, that was what our initial gift was.
Mhm.
And and lacrosse, I think lacrosse is doing a wonderful job.
I have a question about transportation.
Mhm.
So a couple of years ago, I was at a game and the other team came in a really fancy bus. I mean, and the other team had like a school bus kind of thing. So when we reimburse, we wouldn't reimburse to get
The coach. bus.
Yeah, a coach bus.
No, we only pay for school buses for all of our teams. If a team wants to upgrade to a coach bus, somehow boosters or whoever has to pay for that upgrade.
And we permit that. We can't stop it.
As long as they're willing to pay for it, we allow them to do it.
I don't know if you can stop it if we can't provide, like, they went out to Philly 2 weeks in a row. Could we have provided the school bus for the rugby team to go to Philly 2 weeks in a row? Probably not. We don't have enough drivers.
Would you want to ride to Philly? School bus.
School bus, usually.
I mean, it was all
On
parent busing.
on that same subject, I was talking with a bus provider. And he says one of the problems in the spring is all the sports are taking place at the same time. And if those games could be scheduled differently, so that primarily so that the elementary, the first run gets back. If you could schedule the games after that first run gets back, then they have enough guys to do the work.
Yeah, the problem with spring sports is they all start right after school.
And if that could be shifted, okay, so that the track team starts at 5 o'clock instead of 3:30, we'd have a chance to get our drivers to drive rather than these others.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. and that's-
But that requires, I mean, and we can do that for our incoming teams too. We can stagger those so that Laguna Valley has a chance to get
Yeah.
other drivers.
That almost sounds, Tom, though, like that's sort of an interconference
The home
discussion
team
too.
sets a time. Okay, but if the ADs cooperate.
That's what I'm
Okay,
getting at, yes.
okay, and every district has having transportation problems, especially in the springtime. That if they move the timeframes to coordinate with that first run, okay, we have a chance of not having to pay a premium price to get these drivers to drive, because we have enough drivers.
No, I get it, but it's gonna take some
So,
interplay within the districts.
Yeah, traditionally, we haven't worried about it. We just put another driver on and take a bus and go. Okay, but this is 2022.
So how much we giving lacrosse? We gave them 20 last year,
we gave him,
and then we're gonna give them 30 this coming year,
that was my understanding, that's what I had
and
written
then
down.
40, 23, 24.
And yeah, their total, from the estimate, when we looked at it back in September, their estimated cost per team was right around $25,000.
Would you look at that again before we go too much further with this?
I can have them,
Because some of that expense was uniforms and one-time expenses.
well, that's not including those one-time expenses. That 25,000 is your typical,
That's what I'd like to take a look at.
yeah, I mean, that $25,000 per year was coaches, transportation, EMT, all that type of stuff. And then we take off the little bit of revenue that we would get because the ticket sales would come back to us, and
Why
then
did they have an EMT?
Because
they're required to have somebody
Yes,
there
They get hurt.
on just kind of similar to football, is my understanding. They have to have an EMT on site
Yeah.
during the games. And that's a lacrosse role.
Our trainer's not good enough?
If the trainer's there ever during the entire game, I think we're fine. But my understanding, the trainer's meant to float between all sports. So if a lacrosse game's going on and they have to go somewhere else, then the game has to stop until either the trainer comes back or an EMT is on site. So somebody has to be there for them to play.
So, you gonna say something?
Then we're fully funded in 24, 25.
Yep.
That's the plan.
So,
And then there's about $14,000 worth of one-time, when I say one-time, to get everything set up, and then they would be recurring over so many years to replace equipment.
oh, I'm sure.
And
So,
just, Randy did text me, because he's a big hockey dad, he did want the group to know that last year there was a middle school JV and varsity hockey team of about 50 players
The whole program?
in the whole program.
okay, so
Does he
we
know how many
will
girls?
not have
I don't know, Rand.
we will not have a meeting again before we vote on the budget.
No.
So how are we gonna work this out?
What I would do is I would put a motion before the budget approval so that you vote on this, and I would have it included in the budget total.
Julia, I had a discussion with Mike, and there is some consideration, though it's not it's really a board decision at this point. But there is some consideration with the possibility of having a short board meeting on June the 6th. If we're able to find a good candidate and, to make that appointment. So there might be that possibility of I don't want to load that meeting up with lots of things because it'll interfere with Tom's committee, but there may be an opportunity there.
Poor Tom.
We discussed before, wasn't it?
We don't
Yeah.
interfere with the business of your committee.
Yeah, so,
honestly.
yeah, I knew that would set you right off, so,
I mean, really. Tom, can you work your meeting down to 20 minutes? Could you do that?
Yeah, all right.
Let me run it.
Yeah, let Jared run it.
We'll duct tape Tom in the corner.
so there,
That was
My- I'm not saying this in absolute terms, but there could be the possibility that if we do that, there'd be another opportunity maybe to have a motion or a discussion, whatever, before the final adoption.
All right, if not, well, we'll just have to do something else.
Yep.
Okay, so, but we're all basically in agreement with the basic plan that your assignment is to look into this with a few questions tagged on by Tom. So
What were
Rugby,
the questions? I mean,
he wants to know about, he wants you to look at something again.
he wanted to look at the equipment, and that's what the answer. that
Oh,
I
so you
just
have
did.
your answer
I
now.
just want you to send that around again.
Yeah, I mean, I can have them resend it. We just,
Well, just,
So-
whatever they sent us before. I want to take a look at it.
I can
It's been
share
like a decade since we looked at this.
share it with you right now.
Well,
So
yeah,
did-
my computer's back in my desk.
Why do
Did we,
you, go ahead.
did we come up with the idea that they would be fully funded in 3 years before? Or did we just leave it open-ended?
We have a
Because-
schedule.
In the 3-year, the timetable that was presented before would pretty much get them to be fully funded.
I know, but did we?
There was
We
no
have-
approval of anything like that to
we
fully
lead them
fund
to
them.
believe
No.
that 3 years, because if we could spread it out over 5 years and, go in, instead of 30 this year, do 25. And then, 30, 45, 50, 60. So over 5 years, we could get them up to 60 if we just bumped lacrosse 5,000 every year, which is, 5,000 more than they're getting now.
You-
I mean, I don't know. That's-
That's at the discretion.
I didn't know if they were
With the Jeevers over there.
thinking that they had any promises.
Maybe when you call.
You maintain your calmness, or I'll come over there and get you.
So Tom's a no vote on that, right?
Hmm?
You're a no vote on that?
Absolutely. I think we should fund it off. I think we should fund it next year, so.
Well, I'm a no vote on that. So we're-
And I'll accept a
Not
path
on
to
the
funding.
committee. Okay. Terry, do you have any feeling about Cinda's suggestion?
It's a good idea, but we sort of, I think, partially committed to the
Well,
other.
that's why I was
Peter
asking,
thing.
because I don't remember.
Yeah,
I thought we told them that we would work on getting it fully funded, and I didn't know where the 3 years.
It was a
came
presentation
from.
that Mike did during, it was probably audit and finance of
So,
what our recommendation was for it.
so I
There was
think,
no commitment by the board.
Cindy, technically, there is no legal commitment to do that, but there could be perceived a moral or an ethical one based on the presentation that Mike made.
Everybody would come in. So what we get to know everybody. Okay. So we're basically back to the same plan, although I think Cinda's suggestion is worthwhile thinking about a little bit. If you change your mind, let Jared know, or me or Walter or whatever. So rugby, 5,000, hockey, 10,000, phase in lacrosse, 30,000 this year, coming year.
Mhm.
Okay. Any further comment here?
Well,
None?
Are you going to make a commitment at this point to phase them in 3 years, or we're just gonna say 30,000 next year and leave it open?
So,
Phase in.
so Jim, the way this can be handled, okay, so again, so all voices are heard, is there'll be a recommendation from the committee, and then that'll show up as the motion.
Mm.
If Cinda really wants to to modify that, she could certainly put an amendment to that motion, spreading that phase in over a 5-year period. And then if the board then voted to accept her amendment, and then the motion would be changed to 5 years instead of 3,
Sure.
and then we would vote on the original motion.
I just think so we don't have to recall this, next year when we're having this conversation, and for the boosters and players of the sports, everybody's on the same page or has the same goal. So if it's in the motion itself, that in 3 years, we're going to fully fund this as a full team, then everybody's on the same page. If we're not going to do that and leave it open-ended, then, that leaves everybody a little in the dark. That was the only reason for the question.
Yeah, I think they'd object.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Jerry? Looks like you do. You have estimate for 2020, 122 reserve. budget.
Those are the capital reserve budget. One is an estimate for where we're gonna come in this year. The other one is a proposed budget for 22-23. These both were previously or last week discussed at Buildings and Grounds. We have made some adjustments, moved some things between categories 1, 2, and 3 for 22-23, and just wanted to really revisit them, see if there's any additional questions. But the budget itself would be on the agenda for June 13th as well for approval. I know part of, for 22-23, and really for the estimate for the end of 21-22, there right now, there is no transfer in there for, if we do end up to the positive, depending on how much to the positive we may end for 21-22. The board typically votes on making that transfer sometime in October. So that is not in this, estimate for the ending funding. There is a $200,000 transfer, but that had previously been approved as part of the turf that the general fund would reimburse the capital reserve over 2 years for the turf that was put in last spring.
We looked at this in Buildings and Grounds. I'd also like to point out that the money the 680 that we're planning on spending, that typically doesn't get all spent in that academic year. We typically don't get all these projects done.
No.
The last two with the numeral 1, we moved them up. But should we show some planned money being spent over in that right column out of that $1,000,006?
We can't typically, what we do is once they're actually approved, like bids would be approved, then I would move that over there. Once we actually know closer to a dollar figure, but so the reason why we kind of the plan projects is that then we don't have to come back for board approval to necessarily complete the project.
But that's why, when are we bidding those two projects?
The plan would to bid them
This
the
fall?
fall for them to start as soon as school's out. So there may or may not actually be money in 22-23 actually spent on it, depending on when somebody can get in here and actually get started when school's over.
Which two are you speaking about? Excuse me, Terry.
What's that?
Which two are you just referring
The
to?
last two number 1s, the East Pike rooftop HVAC and the East Pike HVAC. controls.
22, 23.
I have a couple questions. The Horseman roof and electrical system, why was it moved down in priority? Did they suddenly get better and not as urgent, or?
We know that the East Pike roof is going to need replaced at some point, but it is not leaking right now. There are no issues with it, so that's why it's a number 3.
I mean, the Horseman.
Horseman roof.
Yeah, but the electrical system, did it somehow rewire itself, or?
No, the electrical system is an expansion of the existing electrical system.
Mm-hmm.
It's
But-
putting in 3-phase power and going back to the pole. So the electrical system, the way it is today is the way it is tomorrow.
Okay, but it's
I
not,
think the logic was, we don't know what we're gonna be doing with that building in a year or two.
and so that's why, but
So why put $1 million dollars into it when it's gonna be without kids, our fourth and fifth graders at least.
Yeah. Is it bringing it up to code? Was that the purpose of it? Was it to bring it up to code or?
It's up to code.
But, okay.
It may not be up to 2022 code.
I-
And I want to be clear about that. okay?
No, I
Because
understand.
If it gets out that our buildings are not up to code, okay, then a lot of things become not optional. Okay, the building is accepted as code as it sits right now.
Okay, but still not,
So Tammy, the requirement to meet the code is triggered by the size of whatever refurbishment you do on the building.
okay, so if we build it up, it's gonna have to.
So the last time the building had some sort of major refurbishment, all of that would have been brought up to code, or the majority would have brought the building up to code. If it occurred 20 years ago, then it's the code from 20 years ago.
Yeah, but we just did the entrance and we did the whole first floor area. And
Correct.
so when they did that, they also would have repaired any violations, any technical violations of the code at that point throughout the whole building.
So if we make it more handicap accessible,
That's the.
then, but I know it's not on here, but if we were to do that, then we would have to do,
Well, one of the problems with the handicap accessibility is that it requires an elevator. And the elevator requires a three-phase power of some magnitude, which the
And
building
that's-
will not support. So in order to put the elevator in, we gotta go back and pull and bring it back.
and that's what the 600,000
Well,
was,
and that does all kinds of other stuff.
okay.
The building was not built, I suspect the building was built before Indiana had electricity.
That's a probability. And the next question I have is, we're getting teachers, desks and chairs. What do we do with the old stuff?
Auction it.
Stick it-
I wanna auction it, garage sale it, give us money for other stuff that we could do around the schools.
That's the plan with this, well, there's actually a motion on the board agenda tonight to start that process of auctioning off a lot of the unused equipment. I mean, some of the desks and stuff get to the point where they're just completely unusable and they get thrown away, but, and that usually happens with most of the furniture that we get rid of, but we do have some extra now, and it will go off to auction, so.
Awesome. That's all I wanted to know.
That's the auction we're talking about tonight, right?
Yes, I'm just, all kinds of stuff from Eisenhower.
I'm making 3 bids now.
Just all the buildings.
All the buildings, yes.
I have a question too. The rent on the Clark property,
Yes.
how long is that lease? When was the last time that rent was increased? It's a full house, correct?
It is, yes.
$7,000, I come up with $583 a month for rent.
No, that's a net
And that's,
figure.
That's not just. the-
yeah, that's a net figure and what is taken off the rent. And off the top of my head, I don't know what the rent is, but the general fund, we know what the tax bill would be for that. And because the district owns it, we don't pay taxes to ourselves. So the general fund, let's say we get $10,000 a year in rent, we take, $1,500, $2,000 off that would have been taxes paid had it been a taxable property.
Okay.
That stays in the general fund. Any cost, a lot of times Cheney's guys don't have time to go up there and fix things, or so a lot of times, Hot Realty, they manage the property. So they'll just send one of their guys over to do something, and we just pay the bill out of the rental income. So that's why it's 7,000.
Okay, that's fine.
I think you're close on that 10, I think the rent was somewhere between 10 and 12 a year.
Yeah, I want to say it's 900, somewhere around there for a month.
900 or 950, something like that.
Yeah.
Plus utility.
And then Hot Realty, I think it's about $100 a month for managing it. So that,
Get about
like Mr.
10%.
Schroff said, that 7,000 is net all
Can
expenses.
you get a
Okay.
minute, take a look at that lease and see if the opportunity is to raise the rent.
I think it's actually happening very, very soon. I just talked to Hot Realty last week, so.
I think it was a 2-year lease, and as I recall, it's coming up soon.
Anything else on the deferred maintenance? proposed budget for 2022-23. I guess that's what we've been talking
Yeah,
about.
it's one's just an estimate for the current school year, and the other one is the budget, proposed budget for next year. And it'll be on the June 13th board meeting as well for approval.
6:28, the clock magically changed. So it's now
Oh,
6:20.
it did.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Yeah. So anything for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thumbs.